Hey everyone, Dan Johnston here. I'm the Jack of all Ministries, and today I'm going to show you how I put Christmas lights up on my house in under 8 minutes. Well, now that it's Thanksgiving week, I wanted to take a break from the videos that I have been making and give you guys some tips on how to put up Christmas lights really quickly. This is an idea that I came up with a couple of years ago when we were living in North Carolina because our house there had a lot of roof lines that were hard to get to, and I wanted to come up with something that was very simple to repeat every single year. Now, full disclosure, this method, the first time you do it, is going to take you a little bit of time. It took me 2 to 3 hours to kind of prep everything and get it all set up the first year, but I can tell you that each subsequent year will give you a ton of time savings if you do this. So it's really kind of a worthwhile investment. What you're going to see in this video today is actually the second year that I've done it at our house here in Illinois. Last year I took 2 hours to get things prepped up. This year I got everything put up in under 8 minutes, and I plan on it being exactly the same for many years to come. So basically, the idea of the process is very simple. You're going to get some conduit, you're going to strap some Christmas lights to it, and you're going to hang them from hooks on your roof. It goes right up and right down every single year, and so that's why it works so well. Now, just knowing that alone might be enough to spark your imagination and say, okay, I know how I'm going to do this. But if that's not you, go ahead and keep watching, and I'm going to walk you through the process that I took to get everything ready so that I could get my Christmas lights up and down very quickly every year. So let's start off with talking about what you're going to need to get this done. The first thing you're going to need is some conduit. I used 1/2-inch EMT because I thought that was the easiest thing to do. I mean, you could use PVC conduit, you could use regular PVC pipe, you could use wood if you wanted to. But for me, just the 1/2-inch EMT was the easiest way to go. You could get really fancy and paint this stuff up or something like that. But for me, it's only up 2 months a year, anyway, and you don't really see it. So to me, it was just easier to just go regular 1/2-inch EMT. You're also going to need some connectors because, when you buy EMT, it usually comes in 10-foot lengths. So any stretch of roof you have that's going to be more than 10 feet, you'll probably want to connect them. So you're going to need some connectors there. If you have peaks on your house, you're going to need some wire. You're going to need some cable ties to strap the lights to the conduit. You're going to need some screw-in type hooks. And it's very important that the opening of this hook is wide enough to let the conduit slide into it. Once it's up there, you want to be able just to pop the conduit into it without having to fight it and push it in. And finally, of course, you're going to need some Christmas lights. For me, I went on Amazon and I bought some outdoor LED fairy lights because I didn't want to have to be changing out bulbs and stuff like that. Like I said, I wanted to throw this up and pull it down and not have to think about it. So I went with the outdoor fairy lights, and that also came with an added bonus where you can actually change the modes on these lights so that it actually puts on a little bit of a different show whenever you feel like changing the mood. So now that you know what you need to get, the first thing that you're going to have to do is you're going to want to measure your roof lines. And it's really important that you're thinking about 2 different things here. Okay, you first need to know exactly how much conduit you need, and that's going to trace the roof lines of your house. But you also need to know how much light to buy, how long of strands of lights you need to get. And it's not just that every single portion of your roof is going to have conduit there. There might be a point where that hits the end of the conduit and then jumps a couple of feet up to the next portion of conduit. So you're going to need to know what the length of Christmas light is you need to transfer from conduit to conduit. For me, I was able to get away with using one 50-foot length of light. That gave me enough for my 12-foot peaks, my smaller peaks that are next to it, another piece that transfers to the back, and then a 13-foot length. So a 50-foot length was perfect for me. And the other thing that you need to think about when you're getting the length is you want to consider where your outlets are going to go. For me, I was able to do everything in one strand, but you may have to split it up if your roof is designed in a weird way. So you need to know how you're going to get power to each section and how many sections you're going to need to do. So once you've done that, the next thing you're going to want to do is cut and assemble your conduit pieces. Now, EMT conduit is really easy to cut. You could use pipe cutters, you could use a hacksaw, or I went ahead and just used my Sawzall and just chopped it up really quickly. For the pieces that need to come together, you're going to want to get some type of EMT fitting. For me, I use compression fittings, but you could also use push-on connectors, screw-on fittings, or probably even duct tape if you wanted to. But really, it's nice to have one solid, rigid piece when you're trying to hang it up there so you don't have to worry about points where it could flex and have to move your ladder and stuff like that. So the next thing you're going to want to do is connect the peaks. What I did was I went ahead and drilled holes all the way through at both ends that were going to come together at the peak. And then I got some wire and I ran it through a couple of times. I didn't want to just do a single run and have it accidentally break when I was moving things around. So I wrapped it through a couple of times, twisted it on itself, and this actually gives you something that you can hang on one hook at the top of the peak. So you don't have to worry about bringing both sides in together. You can just hang it all at one time. When you do it that way, you can just climb up the ladder part of the way, reach up as high as you can go, hang that wire on the hook, and then you don't have to worry about climbing all the way up to the hooks yourself. So the next step to this is actually attaching the Christmas lights to the conduit. For me, I just went ahead and got some cable ties and just wrapped it around, connecting it every 2 to 3 feet, something like that. It's also helpful if you can twist the wire around the conduit as you go, which keeps it tight so you don't get sags and stuff like that. I noticed that I forgot to do that when I put it up this year, but I'm not going to worry about it. Next year, I'll make sure that I twist it before I put it up, and that'll fix that problem. The other thing you want to do when you're attaching here is make sure you remember to leave gaps between the different sections of your roof. So you might have only 6 inches between conduit, but you're going to want to make sure you have at least 6 inches worth of wire to go from one place to the next, because if it gets too tight when you're putting it up there, it's going to put some unnecessary strain, or you might not be able to reach the next point. So make sure that you calculate for that beforehand. So once you have your lights and your conduit all ready to go, the next thing you got to do is head outside. I went to all the gables and I put a hook at the center of every peak. I also put them at the bottom corners. And if it was ever going to be longer than say 8 feet or so, I tried to put a hook in the middle. Now, it's also important that you think about not putting too many hooks in there, because the more hooks there are, the more you have to fight when you're up on the ladder. So for me, I try not to put any more than 3 on one piece of conduit if you can help it. It's also really important that you remember to get hooks that have an opening that's wide enough to slide your conduit in. I know I already said that, but it's really important. The first time I did this, I didn't think about that, and so I installed all the hooks, and when it came time to slide the conduit into it, the hooks didn't fit, so I had to replace them all, and I still had to fight it because I didn't go big enough. So make sure that you have more than enough opening on your hooks to slide the conduit into it. And once you get to this point, it's time to actually start putting the lights up on your house. I recommend taking a peak to either one side or the other and starting there. I would go up the ladder, not all the way, but just as high as you need to go in order to get the wire to hang on the center hook, and then you can go to either side and push the conduit over to the hooks and do it that way. And then work from one end to the other and just do each piece as you go. It can be really, really helpful at this time to make sure that you have somebody kind of navigating the conduit and the wire on the ground, just so that you don't get hung up in bushes or, get caught trying to move things around. If you wanted to, I suppose between the lengths of conduit, you could add some rope or some wire or something like that to give it some support so that you're not putting any pressure on the wires themselves, because you wouldn't want to start putting this up on the roof and then have a wire snap and then lose all your Christmas lights. And then for the last step, what you need to do is plug it in and enjoy it. And really, that's all there is to it. It's really such a simple process that I wish I had done it a long time ago. I would have saved myself so many years of pain and agony just climbing up on ladders and moving around bushes and nailing things in and stapling things in and just doing all these things that were totally unnecessary if you just invest a couple of hours at the beginning. I wish I would have thought of this a long time ago. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and show you the video that my son took of me as I put up the Christmas lights this year, and you can actually see the timer so I can prove to you that I was able to get my lights up this year in under 8 minutes. And there you have it, Christmas lights on my house in under 8 minutes. Next year, I hope to get that time down even more. And so I hope that you found this helpful, and I hope that this makes your Christmas season a little bit more enjoyable because you're spending less time putting stuff on your roof and more time with your family. So if you found this helpful, I'd appreciate it if you consider liking and subscribing to my channel because these are the types of things that I like to tackle. And with that, I hope that you have a great Christmas season, and I will see you on the next video.